Alright guys, welcome to my fight night, Adesanya versus Pyfer full card breakdown. How are you guys doing? Yes, I am live. I'm alright, how are you doing, Ilya Pyfer? Oral by ceiling? I think he'll be ranked, for sure. I think he'll be a staple in the rankings. I just don't know if he's gonna break like 7. I'll do a few questions since we're a little bit early, then we'll get into the last week's breakdown, and then we'll continue with this week. The last card was a movie, a weird movie. Yeah, it was, to say the least. I just finished Stirling. That's a rough one. Hey, Liu Young. You think that was Lerryan's last chance for gold? I mean, realistically, probably. He's not young, to say the least, and UFC is not going to give him a good matchup next. Torres and Ziam versus Arman. They're both interesting fights. Torres has some pretty crazy takedown defense, but I do think that Arman would probably just survive past round 1, and Torres's explosive style would work against him. Like Murphy beats Diego 5-round decision for sure. I mean, it's tough because Murphy doesn't have the power to put Diego away. And Diego needs pretty much one punch on Murphy because Murphy's just not the most durable. So, like, while Murphy is 100% skill for skill better than Lopez, I don't know that that would transfer into beating Lopez. I mean, were you frustrated seeing Mavzar not shoot for the first 3 rounds? It was very strange to watch. I still don't really understand what he was thinking. People have said that he was like maybe conserving his energy and such because first 5-round fight and all of that, but for 3 rounds you're not wrestling? I mean, I could understand round 1 you take it a little slow, but it was very weird. Top 3 145ers have the best chance of dethroning Volk, in my opinion, John, Kevin, and Mavzar. I would say John and Kevin for sure. Other than that, like maybe just a Steve Garcia because of this style. I just score of Lloyd versus Murphy. I'll get to that when I do the breakdown of that one. Ziam versus Arman? I might lean Ziam, to be honest. Who can beat Mavzar? I think he's overrated. Yeah, I think that John, Lopez, and Volk would all beat Mavzar. But Ilya was ducking Mavzar, you don't understand. Yeah, for sure. Arnold Allen? In a rematch, maybe. Oh, you're saying Arnold Allen beat Volk? That's also possible, but I would probably lean Volk because they're both like point fighters, and Volk is probably the slightly cleaner point fighter. Kevin versus Steve? I'd probably lean Kevin. What do you think about Roman dropping Duncan with the spinning back fist? We'll get to that. Alright, I think we could just get into the breakdown from last. They're up here. Alright, there we go. Okay, so starting with Chanel Dyer versus Oliveira. This went pretty much how I expected, because Oliveira is just ridiculously aggressive. Dyer definitely improved after her last loss. I'm still not convinced she's anything crazy special, but she is dangerous to say the least. She has more power than most of the WMMA fighters. So she got it done with the head kick and then just follow up with the punches. So entertaining fight, fun. Not much more to say about that. We'll see what Dyer does in the future. Oliveira's probably gone from the UFC realistically. Al-Sawadi versus Rock. Yeah, I thought Shamrock sucked, and he's even worse than I thought. Like, Anshul Jubli would TKO him within 2 rounds. Like that's what we're talking about here. I don't know how one is this bad at MMA. I have nothing to say. Like Al-Sawadi did fine, I guess. I don't think he really had to do anything because Shem is absolute garbage and just needs to be as far from this sport as possible. So yeah, no real thoughts beyond that. But also, Wadi's a good fighter, right? He's explosive, he has decent movement and so on. So no disrespect to him. I mean, I'd still like to see fights with him. They tend to be somewhat entertaining, at least. Moving on to Perisic versus Sutherland. Even though this was technically a very dominant performance from Perisic, actually seeing it did not feel like that because he got rocked pretty early by Sutherland, and even though he was able to fight through it, and he is definitely the better striker to say the least, I mean, you got rocked by Louis Sutherland. It is not something that you really want to see. Perisic, I mean, again, he's going to give a lot of these heavyweights problems because he is a very clean striker to the extent that, like, yeah, you're going to knock out a Derek Lewis most likely, and so on. But I do need to see more growth from him so that he's not getting lit up by a Louis Sutherland in the pocket and such. All right, moving on to Montes versus Trocoli. This was a wildly frustrating fight to watch. I don't know why Montes wanted to clinch every time he almost knocked out Trocoli. He could have knocked him out a good 5 or 6 times at an absolute minimum. And I stopped watching round 3, so I don't know if there were like even more opportunities. Montes is like, he's sort of, I mean, he should be, let's say, a fun prospect. But if he keeps clinching for no reason after he rocks his opponent, I mean, yeah, you're just giving them time to recover, especially against someone who wants to grapple. It was very strange to watch. And I know some people are saying, like, oh, maybe people are betting on themselves by decision. I don't think it's the case because he was swinging like a lunatic when he was in the center. But I think it's just really poor fight IQ from some of these newer guys. I don't know what it is. Mario Pinto versus Felipe Franco. This was really funny because a few minutes before this fight, I gave out a bet of Mario Pinto to win by unanimous decision. Everyone thought I was absolutely insane, but this did end up playing out kind of how I expected in a super weird way, which the night before this fight, I was trying to figure out if I wanted to put anything on this fight at all, and Pinto goes to decision, I'm not going to say frequently, but like more frequently than you would expect given what people's opinion of him is. And even when he does get the finish, he's fighting pretty slow until he gets the finish, and it's usually just one big moment or he's ragdolling you the entire fight and he has to find the finish that way. And Franco isn't as bad as people think. Like, he's super young, he gassed out on Contender Series, yes, it was bad, but skill for skill, he's not terrible. So this ended up just being an anticlimactic fight where, like, okay, Pinto had the camp, and he's technically the slightly better fighter, but he's a very slow fighter, and the skill difference is actually not really that big. So Franco could actually be a decent addition to the UFC in a very weird way. And Pinto, again, he's not going to be a fun fighter. He's going to be a fighter who could get these flash finishes out of nowhere, but you can't rely on him putting on a barn burner or something. Anyways, moving on to Wood versus Chiesa. So I will say, I don't know how this was a split decision. I thought Wood very clearly won this. Rounds 1 and 3 weren't particularly close in my opinion. Like, Chiesa was only hitting the arms and air. Wood, I mean, he wasn't doing that much damage, but at least he was landing. So, yeah, I mean, Wood gets it done as an underdog again. I think the Delgado fight was a robbery, but this fight was fine. Yeah, he's just pretty technically sound. And Chiesa, while having the power advantage by a long shot, just does not have the ability to really put things together. His style is just wing strikes as hard as he can and hope he eventually lands. So I don't think Chiesa has much of a future in the UFC, in all honesty. Wood, we need to give him a ranking shot at this point, because even if he shouldn't have beaten Delgado, I mean, he's beaten a lot of people he was not supposed to beat, and he has earned that opportunity, in my opinion. Mason Jones versus Axel Sola. Very fun fight. I still think Mason Jones sucks. Yes, he does keep winning. It's still just like, all Mason Jones does is constantly wade forwards, get absolutely mauled, hope he survives, and then just use the fact that he has endless cardio to break you later in fights. Same thing happened again. He almost gets knocked out like multiple times, and then it's like, okay, yeah, he just has endless cardio and a lot of durability, so he keeps going. And it will work at these levels, in all fairness, and it is entertaining. I'm not going to claim otherwise. But once he's fighting like a more competent, or I shouldn't say competent, Sola's good, right? But when he's fighting a more experienced striker and people who have the cardio to go 3 rounds at full pace and such, and have the movement to not get stuck against the fence and just be able to circle properly and such, they're just going to absolutely eviscerate him. So Jones is fun, but I don't expect him to go very far in the sport. Fight of the year contender? Maybe. I mean, we'll see how other fights pan out over the course of the year, but it was definitely very fun. Mason Jones is the new Dan Hooker. Yeah, just a much less skilled version of him, but yeah, I mean, somewhat similar in ways. Anyways, moving on to Danny Silva versus Curtis Campbell. I will say, let's be a little bit easy on Campbell here. I know a lot of people are saying he's a fraud because of the outcome of the fight, but he's very young. Danny Silva is a very tough debut, and in round 1, Campbell was looking pretty good. Essentially, he gassed out, right? I know he technically got TKO'd, yes, but he got TKO'd because he gassed out because of how hard he was going for position in round 1. He has time. He can adapt. I am still actually pretty high on his future, even seeing how this fight went. Danny Silva's good. His boxing is, like, I mean, he gave Vallejo's problems for a reason. So Danny Silva, again, he needs to fight up. And Campbell, they should give him a step down, let him crush a few cans, and then 2-3 years, maybe put him on another big card and see what happens from there. Why do you glaze BSD so much but don't like Mason? Because BSD's grappling is at least very technical, right? On the feet, he definitely has some deficits, but he's improved a lot. And on the ground, he's, I mean, an extreme technician. Mason just does stuff and isn't very good at any of it. Campbell versus Keita, who would win? Right now, I'd probably lean Keita. He has more experience by a long shot, and he has the power that Campbell just can't make a mistake. Give it a few years, though, and I think that will flip. Thoughts on Danny Silva? Yeah, I mean, he could go pretty far. He could be ranked, in my opinion. All right, moving on to the strange fight in CLD versus Roman Dolidze. So, CLD got dropped by a spinning back fist off Roman Dolidze. That's a world we live in right now. This was a garbage performance from CLD, and it's the issue of, again, that he doesn't just fix the fundamentals. And he is extremely talented, but when you're not just putting basic stuff off the middle, people can just continuously dive at your legs, or can just continuously pressure you, or just throw random wild stuff and some of it lands. I mean, CLD is the most talented fighter in the weight class. Also, one of the worst at using his talent efficiently. Like, Dolidze is not someone you should be making look decent at this point in his career, in all honesty, right? Like, Dolidze he's a good grappler, right? And when he was younger, I think even the striking was somewhat clean. Still on the slow side, but at least there was some talents there, let's say. At this point, it's just like, he's old. We've seen him dominated multiple times now. Dropping around to him is not good. So CLD still has a ton of talent. It's still going to be hard to pick against him unless it's someone really good. But it was not what I wanted to see, to say the absolute least. Anyways, moving on to Iwo Baraneski versus Austin Lane. At least Iwo delivered, right? Nothing else on the card, or I shouldn't say nothing else. Mason Jones versus Axel Sol was fun, and there was a few other fun. But Iwo versus Lane did what he was supposed to do. Iwo just knocks him out in 28 seconds, literally. It doesn't mean much because Lane is Lane, but at least we know that Iwo's always going to deliver and not just play things safe because he got hurt in his previous fight. So let's give Iwo a little bit of a step up, not rush him too much because he's young as well and he has a lot of potential. But I do want to see him fight, so I'm just going to give him a little bit of trouble so that we know how he's going to react. And then the most boring fight of the year, with the most boring fight in UFC history. Michael Page technically beats Sam Patterson via one of the most anticlimactic decisions in history. Neither of them wanted to fight, right? As much as I dislike Page, I'm not going to say that Patterson was trying to fight either, right? Both of them just moved around, stared at each other, feinted a lot, and did absolutely nothing. I mean, Patterson didn't even shoot an actual takedown. Page didn't commit to any strikes whatsoever. He was just tapping on the outside. And I don't know if there's even anything else I could say about that. MVP is genuinely the most boring fighter in UFC history. He's had multiple fights like this already. So just give MVP someone who will actually come forwards. I mean, You could give him Fluffy, like let Fluffy maul him and then just retire him, because he's just not, like, I don't know. There's nothing we can do to fix the MVP problem, in all honesty. I would argue Elikana versus Ebo was worse. You know, at least Elikana was throwing tapes. Like, at least he was landing stuff. Do you think MVP versus Strickland would be boring? Yeah, it would be boring, because MVP would just be running around the outside, getting jabbed once every, like, 2 minutes because he just wouldn't stay in one place. So it's like, there's a lot of people who beat MVP, but it's hard to give him a step up because, I mean, no one wants to see that. So it's a weird situation where it's like, okay, you have to give him a step up and just like straight up sacrifice him, or I don't know, like, or maybe just give him some like ridiculous prospect and hope they smoke him. I don't know who they could give him at like welterweight. I mean, honestly, I don't even think you could give him like Gaudier at middleweight, because, I mean, he might beat Gaudier in all honesty, because Gaudier has no idea what to do if his opponent circles. So it's a very weird position. Neil or MVP? I'd probably go Neil, but like relying on Neil at this point is tough. Anyways, so, okay, I know all of you want to ask me what the deal was with why I did not break down Riley versus Aswell. So, long story short, I have a mutual friend with Aswell, right? He asked me to help Aswell for this fight. Usually, I do not like making game plans for fighters anymore, unless I'm getting paid for it, because I feel like it's too easy for them to not take things seriously. But whatever, as a favor, I did make a plan for Aswell. Not going to go deep into it. He kind of followed it for about 2 minutes and then chucked it out the window. So I don't think I'm going to be making game plans for fighters again, unless I'm getting paid or it's for like a massive fight where there's no reason for me to say no to it. The reason why I didn't want to say anything about it on stream is because I know people from Riley's camp do watch my content. So if I even started breaking down the fight at all, I could accidentally give away what I was thinking or something like that. Yeah, there's not much more I could say on that. Anyways, moving on to the main event. I will say, I did score this for Evloev. A lot of people scored it either as a draw or for Murphy. I did score it for Evloev. I do think he just barely edged round 1, and then I gave him 3 through 5 as well, so he wins the 48-46. Round 1 was very close because Murphy had the volume, Evloev had 2 bigger shots, which I personally valued a little more than the pitter-patter volume, but it's debatable, right? If you guys think it should have gone the opposite way, I'm not about to argue with it. I will say, though, both of them look terrible. I don't think either of them have a chance against anyone at the top of the division after this. Evloev's striking looked super stiff and just not comfortable at all. Murphy just doesn't have enough power in his hands to exploit anything. Evloev's wrestling even looked kind of bad. Murphy, I think, tore his hip, right? And even after that, Evloev couldn't control him on the ground at all. I can't believe that this was supposed to be a number 1 contenders fight. And it seems like the UFC can't believe that either, because it seems like they want to go with John Silva for the title shot. So we'll see what happens there. If Evloev fights Volk, I can't give Evloev much a chance. I think he's just going to get picked apart. I think if anything, maybe you do like... I mean, you can't even do Evloev Lopez because Lopez is booked. But I don't even know what you do with him at this point, because he's proven that he's going to underperform every single fight. I thought that Murphy should be a very easy matchup for him, and that he should basically just have control time most of the fight. And he made it look like it was basically a coin flip odds fight, even if I do think he won. So, yeah, I mean, Evloev has underperformed last 3 fights. I only thought he lost the Allen one. I did think he beat Aljo by a very small margin. I think he also beat Murphy by a very small margin. But he's not really that good in comparison to what he'd need to beat Volk. I was in shock when they announced Evloev won, though in retrospect, I was definitely biased by a commentary on my bet on Lerryan. Fair. Volk Chin's mobs are, yeah, 100%. Still should have been a draw, though. I would have been fine with the draw as well. The only reason people think that was a robbery is because Bisping was insanely biased. His gaslighting almost worked on me, to be honest. Fair enough. Lost to Allen, by the way. Yes, I agree with that. How are we doing tonight? I'm alright. How about you? It was a draw on my eyes, but I gave Lerryan round 3 and Mobzar round 1. I gave Mobzar round 3 also because that was the rounds where he rocked him at the end, right? And even though he was behind in volume a lot again, that moment kind of made up for it, but it's definitely an argument of how much damage equals volume, and that's always going to be a question. It is kind of subjective. But anyways, I will set up for this week's breakdown now. It seems like the delay is actually pretty bad today. I don't know what's causing it or not, but oh well, I guess. Alright. Starting with Tynara versus Bruna Brazil. So, Tynara is a pretty much pure wrestler with like somewhat functional striking at this point. It has gotten better over time, but it is still kind of sloppy. She will throw a lot of kicks on the outside. She will enter with a 1-2, and then she'll sometimes throw a flurry of hooks in the pocket. Usually, she shoots on a double leg. If she can't get the double leg immediately, she'll just work in the clinch and look for a trip or a throw. On the ground, she will use ground and pound to help pass guard and then look for submissions from there. When she does strike, she has her chin straight up in the air, and her only defense is to fade backwards with her chin up in the air, so she can definitely get caught. Brazil is mainly a kickboxer who will just stay on the outside and circle constantly. She throws a lot of kicks to the calf and the body. She'll blast knees when people try to enter into the pocket. Mainly with her hands, she's throwing singular counter punches. She uses footwork to evade things on the back foot, generally speaking. She rarely pressures unless she hurts her opponent and is then going to push forwards. However, if you do constantly pressure her, she definitely does seem to wilt. So, I'm going to say this about Bruna, which I feel like I say every time she fights. She is the better fighter here, right? I don't think there's been a singular fight in Bruna's career where she has been the worst fighter. But she just seemingly turns her brain off mid-fight for absolutely no reason on random occasions. She definitely should have won her last fight. She dominated round 1 and her opponent changed nothing round 2. Bruna just stopped trying and just got overwhelmed by pressure for no reason because she just decided to stop throwing the knee that was working all of round 1. Very strange to watch, and because of that, I do have to pick Tynara, right? I think that she will get the takedowns because Brazil is just going to deviate from what is likely her game plan of blasting knees in the pocket. Tynara is going to take her down once around and just keep her there. So Tynara should win a decision here. I will be the least shocked person in the world if Brazil decides to pull another massive upset because she loves losing as a massive favorite and winning as a massive underdog. So that is what it is. Yeah, we'll see what happens here. All right, moving on to Ricky Simón versus Adrian Yanez. Simón is primarily a wrestler, but he has a lot of power in his hands as well. When he is on the outside, he mainly focuses on throwing jabs and calf kicks. He enters the pocket with looping strikes, mainly overhands or uppercuts if he does get into the clinch. He uses his strikes to set up his takedowns. He'll generally shoot actual takedowns on a singular double leg, not just clinch in the pocket and such. If he can get the fight down, he generally tries to either work towards the back or a submission in general. He doesn't really land much ground and pound despite being a wrestler, so it is definitely a weakness of his in my opinion. His defense mainly revolves around a high guard. He does do a okay job at moving it around, so it's not like he's just holding his hands up. He isn't great at fighting backwards though, and his overhands really do start getting predictable if you see it 2 to 3 times, so you can start reading it and punishing it fairly easily. Yanez is basically a pure boxer in MMA. While he can engage, he generally wants you to throw first so he can try to counter. If he is engaging, he'll usually start with a double jab or something similar to close the distance quickly. Because of how straight up he stands, he's very prone to calf kicks and quick takedowns. He, technically speaking, has a high takedown defense percentage rather. But despite that, it seems like any decent opponent who wants to get him down is getting him down, so I don't know if it really means anything. He has really strange, spazzes as well. He'll just eat a massive overhand out of nowhere with zero setup for zero reason. Or just, stop defending himself in the pocket. So, it's not things he really wants, against anyone to be fair, but especially against someone like Simón, where while he's not as technical in the striking, he does have the power to hurt you or put you out. So I am going to pick Simón decision here. I think he should just have the bigger moments and be able to get the fight to the ground enough times that it's just going to eat up the moments. If it stays on the feet for too long, maybe we see something from Yanez, but I don't know. He has a lot of raw potential, but he's never really seemed to get to that point. So yeah, Simone decision, probably another like 29-28 close decision, just as like most of Simone's fights seem to end up being. Moving on to Navajo Stirling versus Bruno Lopez. So Sterling is basically a volume kickboxer. He's relatively patient. He has a pretty diverse skill set on the feet. He throws jabs and assorted kicks on the outside. He's pretty good at mixing up targets. He goes to the body a lot more frequently than most fighters do at those weight classes. He uses a lot of head movement mid-combination to set up his strikes, so he does maintain pretty good defense even during longer combinations. He does have his own wrestling despite being a kickboxer, but usually it's just like reaching down and using the fact that he usually has a strength advantage to try to pick you up and put you down. He's definitely on the slow twitch side, so he doesn't really have the craziest power, but he is very strong and he does have solid 3-round cardio. Lopez is a can. He'll just throw jabs and calf kicks at range. When he enters, it's usually just with a jab overhand. If he shoots a takedown, it's usually a blast double, and then he will fail the takedown and then just clinch you against the cage for dear life as long as he can. He has the chin of a literal newborn baby. If you touch it with anything, he will get rocked and probably go down 10 seconds later. This fight is absolutely pointless. I don't know why we're seeing it. Like, Bruno Lopez is one of those fighters that it just kind of makes you mad that he's in the UFC at all. So yeah, even though Sterling hasn't found finishes so far in the UFC, he should get a round 1 TKO here. If he does not, it is genuinely concerning. So yeah, Sterling by round 1 TKO. All right, moving on to Casey O'Neill versus Gabriella Fernandes. So Casey is well-rounded, but generally focuses on higher volume striking. She constantly pressures forwards and throws in combinations. She is definitely willing to go first or block and then return with a combination immediately. She is very hittable because of the fact that she blind pressures constantly. She does have a diverse wrestling skill set though, and she's not like spectacular at any part of it, but she just does enough that she sometimes eventually gets you down. On the ground, she is just going to go for heavy ground and pound and just try to get a TKO that way. She seemingly does not care about the submission. She just wants to get a finish and just keep throwing stuff. I think she had a fight where she broke 200 strikes in 3 rounds. So she has pretty crazy volume, especially for WMMA. Fernandes is a patient kickboxer. She's going to circle a lot on the outside and only really press forwards if she has a massive advantage. She is a southpaw, so often she's going to throw body and head kicks with the left leg. She usually prefers only throwing 1 or 2 punches at a time. She's a relatively crisp striker, like in terms of the technique, but she doesn't have any real crazy power with the strikes. She tends to use her length and speed as a defense, so a lot of the time she can be tagged if you are just pushing forwards and throwing. Very close fight. I am going to lean Casey by decision here. I think she's going to be able to kind of just drown Fernandes with the pressure, because if you get Fernandes backed up against the cage, I don't know what she's going to really be able to do there, because she doesn't have the power to punch her way out, and she doesn't have the volume to just start throwing with Casey. So Casey should be able to just keep pressing until she's able to do something. There is the caveat that, again, Fernandes could land a big head kick or something here. She definitely is the more technical striker, but Casey definitely wants to win fights a lot more than Fernandes does, it feels like. All right, moving on to Marcin Tybura versus Tyrell Fortune. Starting with Tybura. Tybura is relatively well-rounded, but he is definitely an aging fighter, and we have seen that in his recent fights. On the feet, he'll tend to move around and throw 1 to 2 strikes at a time. He throws a lot of singular kicks, lunging overhand, stuff like that. Occasionally, he'll put a longer combo together with like 2 punches and a kick in between and such. When he does shoot, it is mainly on a double leg. He's willing to just grind for the double leg for like multiple minutes against the cage if he needs to until he gets it. On the ground, he'll land heavy ground and pound, as well as, of course, go for submissions if it does open up. But he does use the ground and pound to open up the submissions. He's not just going to wait and go submission on or anything. Fortune is a somewhat diverse power striker. He likes to lunge forwards with the lead hook into a straight or just an overhand. He'll blast kicks as hard as possible on the outside. He'll continue combinations if he does get you hurt off the initial strikes, but typically it is just the lead hook straight or just a singular overhand. He's also a little bit questionable fight IQ. Like, he'll nearly knock out his opponent and then decide he needs to go for a takedown and get reversed from there. So take that as you will. He does have reasonable takedown defense, but definitely not perfect. And on the ground, he does not have any like spectacular ability to get up from there. I'm going to very mildly lean towards Fortune by TKO because I feel like Tybura's last fight was concerning. What's his name? Ante Delia's not that good, and Tybura made him look very good. So I feel like Fortune's going to be more of the same here. It's just another power puncher who can probably catch him at some point. So yeah, I'm going to lean Fortune TKO most likely early because Tybura is a relatively slow starter. All right, last fight of the prelims. So, starting with Chase Hooper. Hooper is, of course, pretty much a pure grappler. On the feet, he'll pump out a lot of teeps and do most of his work with basic cross counters and stuff like that. In his most recent fight, he decided to cosplay CLD a little too much, turn into a Beyblade with the spinning back fist. He has a variety of takedowns that he did show against Guida, but he definitely can struggle a little bit to control in the moment the fight hits the ground. So sometimes he is getting a lot of takedowns, but his opponent is just getting up immediately every time. Once the fight does settle on the ground, though, he'll keep flowing and look for submissions from there. The biggest issue on the feet for him is that his distance management is kind of terrible. Like, even in the fights that he was winning on the feet, he would rush into the pocket recklessly and kind of get clipped a bit. He was just taking stuff on the chin, and he was able to at those times. I do think against Fernandes, the stoppage was a little bit early, but it definitely showed a massive issue in his game. Gibson is well-rounded, but he's primarily a wrestler. He circles a lot on the outside and constantly switches stances to give different looks. He'll blast kicks pretty much constantly. It is the main strike he wants to throw. When he punches, it's typically an overhand or a lead hook. He doesn't really throw straight punches as much. When he shoots, it's mainly on double legs. Sometimes he'll end up in like weird body lock clinches that just last a excessive amount of time and don't go anywhere. I think that Gibson's lack of straight punches here is going to be a big problem for him because you don't want to take down Hooper. Hooper's just going to sub you off of his back or reverse you and such. And while the kicks may work for a little bit, the kicks will probably end up opening up the takedowns, and he doesn't have the intercepting shots to really knock out Hooper as he comes in. So I think Hooper is going to eventually find a submission here. Whether it's Gibson shooting forced or Hooper does secure his own takedown, I mean, I just don't think Gibson is at the level he would need to be to survive with Hooper on the ground. So yeah, Hooper by submission. I'll answer a few questions before we... Oh, there is one more prelim. Never mind. I'll do the last prelim and then I'll answer a few questions before we go to the main card. All right, Ignacio Bahamondes versus Tofiq Musayev. So starting with Bahamondes. So Bahamondes is a rangy but very aggressive striker, which is not typical for his build. He uses a lot of kicks from the outside and pumps his jab constantly. When his opponents try to enter, he'll fade back and counter with a straight or sometimes a high kick. He has two main issues. First of all, when he throws something, he tends to close too much distance and get into the pocket, which definitely does not benefit his length. The other issue is that while he does have pretty good takedown defense, if you do take him down, he'll kind of just hang out there, and it's not good because he can definitely lose minutes to say the least. Moving on to Musayev. Musayev is a power puncher who kind of just always chases quick finishes. He will blast very tight overhand rights constantly. If he has you against the fence, he'll just start brawling and get a bit more focus on landing the left hook. He does mix in takedowns to change things up, but it's definitely not his strong suit, so, I mean, it's just to do it. It is not because he's going to do anything with it. Musayev definitely has questionable fundamentals. Like, he will switch stances a lot, but choose super weird times to do it and just get blasted with the counter because of it. He also is oddly submission prone, even before his fight with Oralbai. So, I don't know, like, Musayev is dangerous, he just never developed the fundamentals to really make himself dangerous at the highest of levels. So I am going to pick Bahamondes by TKO here. I think especially coming off of a loss, he's going to be hungrier than ever, and it's a good fight for him to just display that he is the vastly better fighter. So it should be a relatively easy layup for him, and which is good because I think the Bahamondes is a very entertaining fighter, and we need guys like him in the next generation coming up. All right, now I'll answer a few questions before we get to the main card. How did Nacho lose to Fiziev? Mainly the issue of entering the pocket too recklessly, because that's Fiziev's range. Can't believe I made it early this time. First time I'm here. Nice to have you here. What he did to Torres is insane. Complete domination and something bad. Yeah, that was impressive, especially because Torres has looked great since. Bahamondes beating Torres and then losing to Fiziev is so bizarre to think about now. Yeah, it is interesting. Think it's going to look like the Torres fight? Yeah, that is very possible. You want to build Ignacio again? Yeah, for good reason. Bahamondes via Kung Fu KO? Maybe. Bahamondes by KO? Yes. Amazov versus MVP? Yeah, I mean, Amazov should win. Which round on the Bahamondes fight? I mean, I don't know. I'll say round 1, but who knows? Not a criticism. I just want to see more of his striking. Of Bahamondes's or Musayev's? What's Ignacio's ceiling? I think he could be top 7 at some point. I don't know why Bilal isn't still champion. He should develop some technique if he wants to be a top fighter. That'd probably be a good idea. McKinney wins this. We'll get to that. Win over Turner was well too. Do you think he can sub Tofiq? It's possible, but I think TKO is definitely the cleaner path to victory. Thoughts on Zellhuber? I mean, I feel like you got to cut him at this point, right? Because he's just 3 fights in a row. He's okay. At least the Ribovics fight was fun, but since then it's been just terrible performance. I don't know if that like took something out of him, that war, but he's just not what people thought he was, to say the least. I think my question was above was talking about fortune. Oh yeah, that's fair. Where do you think Amazov ranks among the best pound for pound grapplers in the UFC? I mean, I don't think he really does, to be honest. He's usually just more of a control wrestler. The fight with Zellhuber makes me more confident in Gamrot. Yeah, same. Honestly, Gamrot's going to ragdoll Ribovics. Yeah, very likely. I don't know if you saw this, but Bob's our team was asking him for early takedowns. He kept saying not yet. Possible UFC interference. I don't think UFC interfered at all with that, to be honest. I think he was just being weird. Ignacio is what Zellhuber wishes he was. Yes, 100%. How do you see Ilya Topuria versus Marvin Vettori going? I mean, Ilya would probably knock him out. MVP versus Wonderboy? I mean, Wonderboy is just the better karate striker, but it would probably be pretty boring. I'm not going to lie. I'm just wondering which of Fortune's fights you watched. From what I saw, he's wrestled. Oh, I'm forgetting the names because it didn't even matter at the moment, but I watched a few of them where he was striking a fair amount. There definitely is tape of him striking, especially in the competitive fights he has. You don't rate Giannis' chance of catching Simone with an uppercut? He could. I'm not saying he can't. I'm not saying like Simone is definitely winning that fight. I just don't think you can really pick Giannis here. UFC is so bad this year. It's definitely not as entertaining as I would have hoped. They need to stop giving untested prospects to Gamrot. They'll never learn. I think Murphy's footwork and the fact that he always circled and never stood still made it hard for Mobzar to time a takedown. In the past, though, Mobzar has never really cared about if he's not getting in on a takedown properly. Like, he'll just dive for it, miss most of it, get to the single, and then just chain. So it still does make it strange that he didn't even try that. Flying out in 7 hours to Seattle to watch the fights upright, and we need it. Best of luck with that, yeah, 100%. Do you think we'll ever get Ilya versus Makhachev? I hope so, but I really don't know, to be honest. Alright, we'll start on the main card now quickly. Starting with Terrance McKinney versus Kyle Nelson. So McKinney is, of course, pretty much the epitome of a glass cannon. He will finish you in first round. get finished in first round or get finished soon after first round. He is very good at taking the fight where his opponent is bad, though. If you are a good striker, he will wrestle. If you are a good wrestler, he will strike. He's good at using his opponent's kicks to time entries when he does want to wrestle. Early in fights, his scrambling is ridiculously good. His striking is, of course, fast and powerful, from straights to hooks to knees, good timing. The biggest weakness, of course, is that he's not the most technical on the feet. So if you're good enough technically and you can stay calm, you can just counter him pretty badly and pretty repetitively until you find the finish. Nelson is a striker who prefers to work safely at range. On the outside, he will throw jabs and calf kicks while holding the high guard. If his opponent doesn't get hurt, he'll just stay a point fighter. If they do run into a counter, he just starts to turn into a wild brawler after he has you mildly hurt. Defensively, he just relies on the high guard and circling constantly. He is not very proactive with big counters unless it's really obviously there. So sometimes he just doesn't find anything over the 15 minutes. He definitely can gas out if he is pushing for a finish, but it has been less frequent of an occurrence at this point in his career, more of an issue earlier. His style definitely requires a lot of precision, though, because he has to, he's basically fighting as a glorified point fighter who can finish you if you mess up a lot. So if he makes one mistake over the 15 minutes, he ends up just getting finished. I started watching tape for this fight, being like, there's no way I can pick McKinney again after seeing what he did against Duncan, regardless of who he's fighting. Then I started watching the tape, and I was like, there's no way I could pick against McKinney when the option is Kyle Nelson. McKinney should absolutely walk through him. I think this is the pattern with McKinney, right? They give him a step up, he fails. They give him a step back down, he absolutely destroys them. They give him a step up, he fails again. This is the step down in the pattern. And Kyle Nelson's kind of slow, is just not very good at anything. And McKinney should be able to pretty much finish him however he wants in round one. So I'm going to pick McKinney by TKO, but I would not be even shocked if he subbed him either. I want to do polls. I keep forgetting this. I'll do a poll for this one. So Mansur Abdul-Malik versus Yousri. Can't say the name. Yousri Belgaroui, I think. But I probably butchered. I'm going to put up a poll for this one. Alright, poll's live. Aaron's got to get a chin reconstruction to become a top 5. Chin, yes, but also just the cardio. It's insane. I picked McKinney last time against Duncan. I'm picking him again, but man, if he loses, I'm going to be so disappointed. Yeah, me too. Just call him Alex Pereira. Yeah. Alex Pereira 0.5. 88% on Belgaroui so far. That's interesting. I think Yousri is just too clean a striker, to be honest. Fair. Grum got cut after the Fernandes fight now. I think he did, yeah. Durable McKinney would be unstoppable. Durable McKinney with cardio would be unstoppable. Alright, Belgaroui is down to 73%, but still pretty high. People forget, man, Belgaroui beat Alex, lost twice to Alex, then joined his team. Yeah. First round sub or Yousri division, maybe. Musayev is also not good, to be fair, but I like Belgaroui here. Fair. I feel bad for Mansur. Needs more time to play. We'll see. McKinney would be unstoppable if it wasn't McKinney. If he wasn't McKinney, fair. All right, I'm gonna end the poll here at around 70% for Belgaroui. All right. So starting with Abdul-Malik. So he is a wrestler whose ground and pound is basically his best attribute by far. However, for some reason, he doesn't use his wrestling that proactively in many of his fights. So like in the Cody Brundage fight, I don't think he even shot a single takedown. This did change in his last fight, though, where he did shoot very quickly against Trockley. On the feet, he definitely turns into a power puncher who will change stances constantly. He tends to kind of lunge into strikes and put combinations together that way. He'll throw like a lunging hook into a lunging overhand and stuff like that. He does have reasonable counters if you get overly aggressive, but that's kind of like, okay, you swing way too wild and he'll swing way too wild back at you. In a slower paced fight, he doesn't really know what to do, but he is improving rapidly fight to fight, to be fair, so it is kind of just the inexperience that's the problem right now. Belgaroui is a tall and long fighter who prefers to main range and just pick at his opponent constantly. He'll use a lot of jabs and force his opponents to try to close the distance because he is going to be longer than them. When his opponent does enter, he'll punish with knees or create an angle and try to counter from there. He does not have the most power, so he's kind of reliant on the volume just adding up. His entire defense is distance-based, so if you can get close, he is extremely hittable. The takedown defense is vastly improved though, but it is also reliant on his length. Now, I have what seems like a controversial take on this fight and both of these fighters. I don't think that Belgaroui is very good. I know he picked apart Bakoyev. Bakoyev kind of sucks. Bakoyev was swinging like a lunatic, and even Bakoyev was catching him at times. So that's just not something you really want to see from someone who's supposed to be the vastly superior kickboxer. Bakoyev also really does not know how to line up takedowns and isn't strong enough to really do anything if he gets you to the ground, unless you're just going to lay on your back like Reese did, right? So if Malik gets a takedown here, I expect him to be able to do a lot more damage than someone like Bakoyev did. And even on the feet, I could see Malik knocking out Belgaroui, because Belgaroui is just not going to have any defense as Malik closes into the pocket. Now, part of why Belgaroui did so well against Bakoyev is Bakoyev has a tiny reach. I think that's like 72 inches for the weight class, right? Malik has a longer reach than Belgaroui does, despite being shorter. So that's no longer going to be an advantage he can use here. So even though Malik I have not been the highest on, and he's greener than I would like here, I do think that he has a solid chance at making this look fairly easy. So I am going to pick Malik here by first round TKO. I'm convinced that Trockley is just Patchy Mix in his suit. Valid. Where are we? Alright. Moving on to Julian Erosa versus Lerryan Douglas. I'll put up a poll for this. Alright, poll should be live. There we go. Malik does have ranking potential. I just worry about how green he is. Like, can he use his reach correctly? Yeah, that's the only concern for him. We will chin Belgaroui. We will beat Hamzan. Valid. Bakoyev low-key like a foot shorter too. Yeah, that is true. Be real. I have no clue who these two are. Fair. Douglas, round 1 KO. Possible. Right now, around 70% for Douglas. Erosa by blood and gut submission, round 3. That's also possible. If the fight goes long, definitely is going to favor Erosa, I will say that. Erosa is one of the most entertaining fighters in the UFC. Yeah, that is true. And Douglas looks like he's wearing PJs here. Yeah, that is true as well. Interesting. How could Belgaroui win, though? If he's able to maintain distance and just move around constantly, I mean, he'll just pick at Malik for 15 minutes. I just don't think it's going to happen. Belgaroui wanting to Alex Max, but he doesn't have power potential. Yeah, agreed. All right, I'm going to end the poll here at 65% for Douglas. All right, starting with Erosa. So, Julian Erosa is basically an educated brawler. He's going to pressure constantly. He kind of keeps his hands down and throws from weird angles. His defense is completely oriented on his ability to just keep moving. So his head movement, his footwork, and so on. And if he gets hit, he kind of just gets hit and accepts it. He does pretty much have endless cardio. He is not the most durable in terms of he will get rocked if you hit him, He does have pretty good recovery, though, so if you don't put him out, he can definitely come back and fight. He can be taken down, but he will mix things up with his own takedowns as well, and is very comfortable trying to pull guillotine while you're getting him down or even after. Douglas is basically a pure power puncher. He's extremely patient. He's going to wait for his openings while blasting calf kicks on the outside. Then he's going to explode into the pocket with overhands or hooks. He will start just spamming hooks if the first one doesn't work and he feels like he has an opening. He doesn't really throw any straight punches at all. Everything is with the intention to knock you out. In all fairness to him, he does have some of the craziest knockout power I have seen for this weight class. He just touches people and they go out cold. It is kind of insane. He does use the high guard defensively, or just decides he wants to hit you harder and just tries to take your head off. I actually think that Erosa's style works perfectly into what Douglas wants to do, because Erosa is going to pressure, he is going to put his hands down, he's going to get hit, and Douglas is going to hit him and flatline him most likely. So I'm going to pick Douglas by KO, probably round 1, and if Erosa is able to survive, it's a late round 2, round 3, we might see something interesting. But yeah, Douglas should get this done pretty early, in my opinion. All right, moving on to Michael Chiesa versus Niko Price. I'll put up both. All right, polls live. Price loses here. It's time for glove to come off. I mean, honestly, even if he wins. Can we just skip this one? I'll make it quick, don't worry. Why didn't you pick the Riley versus Aswell fight? I gave the full explanation for that when I did the recap near the beginning of the stream. So if you go back to that, it is in depth there. Julian hasn't been chinned in a while. I think we see a vintage KO to Erosa complaining about a stoppage. To be honest, I don't think he'll be awake enough to complain this time. 71% for Chiesa to start with. Chiesa future bout over the heavyweight goat in Tybura is insanity. Fair. Oracle, will you shed a small tear when Chiesa retires after going 29-28 with Niko? Perhaps. 29% gotta be trolling. Maybe. Alright, we'll end the poll here. I don't think anyone cares too much about this fight. We will get into the battle of the senior citizens. Alright, starting with Michael Chiesa. I'm just gonna speed run this one. I don't think anyone cares, alright? Okay, Chiesa is pretty much a pure grappler. On the feet, he's going to use his range, throw single jabs and crosses. To set up takedowns, sometimes he'll throw a flurry in the pocket. Typically, he shoots on double legs. If he's countering opponent's aggression, sometimes he'll just go for the single leg and try to rip you down from there. The moment he's mildly secured a takedown, he's going to look to get to the back and then just look for the rear naked choke from there. Even at this stage in his career, he does not feel comfortable on the feet in the slightest, and you can see that with how he moves. If you pressure him and just throw, he's kind of going to have problems. Moving on to Price. Price is an extremely unorthodox fighter from pretty much all positions possible. He throws a lot of kicks on the outside, with his best kicks actually being lunging front kicks to the body. When he punches, it tends to be a lot of wild overhands and hooks. His defense is mainly just moving in strange ways that confuses opponents. It is not technical, it just is. He doesn't defend takedowns. That just is a thing he doesn't do. He does have knockout power in everything he throws, though, but he does have very questionable decision-making and will just start swinging wildly for no reason at times. Chiesa should take him down and sub him. I think we all know this, right? So yeah, Chiesa by sub. Alright, moving on to Alexa Grasso versus Maycee Barber. I will put up the poll. Poll is live. How did he go to round 2 with Jacoby? I don't know. People forget Chiesa sub Tony while Charles couldn't. True. Chiesa and Anthony Smith are going to have better retirement send-offs than DC, Stipe, Anderson Silva, and Jose Aldo. Also true. This one seems pretty split. Barber's only at 58% so far. Maycee gonna send Alexa Grasso into retirement? I mean, it's possible. If Grasso loses, it might be it. Chiesa dropping Masvidal is the funniest thing ever. Yeah, it's wild. That's still, it's probably the most comical thing that's like happened in probably both of their careers. Grasso got to save Mexico after what happened with Brandon. Fair. Barber has been working on her. What the UL? UI? Is how do Maycee's implants affect your pick? I'm in harder weight cut. Have you seen the Netflix MMA card? Yeah, I saw some of the fights on there, but I don't know what to think about it until it happens. Ian McCline can become a 3-division champ and beat everyone in the top 3 in each division. Yeah, true. You're also coming off an injury. In all honesty, I don't know. I'll end the poll here. Barber's at 53%. All right, let's get into the breakdown for this one. Starting with Grasso. Grasso is pretty much a pure boxer. On the outside, she'll move in and out. She'll kind of just pump a jab constantly, along with throwing a few calf kicks. She particularly likes to double jab a fair amount. She works her way into the pocket with quick combinations and does most of her damage there. She doesn't have any idea how to cut off a cage, so anyone who has better footwork than her can just outpoint her at will. Quite literally, that is how she has lost multiple times now. She has pretty non-existent takedown defense for the most part as well, although she does have solid BJJ, so she sometimes can find reversals, submissions, or just get back to her feet. Maycee is basically an educated brawler. She's a little bit too dependent on her left hand. She will sling a lot of overhands and hooks, but she will throw in combinations to be fair. She is pretty good at using dirty boxing with elbows and such. She will shoot takedowns, and they have evolved significantly. It used to be only body locks, but now she will get in on a single or double leg sometimes as well. She mixes things up with head kicks and sometimes catches people unaware because they're just not expecting. She has questionable defense pretty much everywhere. She is the most dangerous fighter in pretty much every single matchup, though, which is why she tends to get away with it. So there's kind of 2 ways this fight goes. Grasso's the better boxer, by far. If this turns into a technical boxing match, she is going to win. The problem for Grasso is that she doesn't stuff takedowns, and Maycee will shoot takedowns. So either Grasso pieces her up at range for 15 minutes, or Maycee gets at least 2 takedowns, is able to get enough time on the ground, do some damage to the ground and pound, and squeak out the decision that way. I feel like the slightly easier path to victory here is for Maycee, because on the feet, at least she has a chance of landing a big moment, and on the ground, she has a more reliable methodology there. So I think that in more than 50% of outcomes, let's say, Maycee takes this. But as you can tell, I'm not exactly confident, to say the least. But we'll go with Maycee Barber by decision. All right. Moving on to the main event. I will put up a poll for this as well. All right, poll is live. I will tap in for Grasso and say for fair. Why Joe looks so angry in the picture? I mean, Joe kind of always looks angry. People forget, man, Hermanson almost finished Pyfer, almost made him quit. True. Pyfer sees Izzy reaching and lunges at him with the enjoyable God. Salty Man Joe is religious now? Interesting. I actually hate Pyfer regardless of my profile pic. Fair. I feel like Pyfer wins, but I can see Prime Izzy coming back after 3 fights. A lot of fighters get 3 fights kids and come back on their 4th. Fair. Izzy by leg kick TKO? Possible. Alright, so Izzy has a 64%, which is kind of reflecting what odds makers are seeing, it seems like. All right, I'll close the poll here. Okay, so starting with Adesanya. Adesanya is kind of a volume kickboxer. He throws out a lot of kicks and jabs at range, with most of the kicks being calf kicks. He does constantly change stances to change up the looks, and he is a little bit reliant on finding the range with his jab. If enter, he will counter usually with 2 hooks. Sometimes he'll get more aggressive and start looking for more punches, but often is just content to point fight. His boxing defense has always been a little bit questionable because he relies on tall man defense for sure, but his wrestling defense, in contrast, has improved considerably throughout the years, and honestly is pretty spectacular now. Especially watching against Imavov was definitely impressive. Moving on to Pyfer. Pyfer is the epitome of one-shot knockout power. He's very focused on the overhand right. He doesn't have crazy setup for it, but he's so fast that most fighters just cannot deal with it. His secondary weapon of choice is the left hook. He has a variety of takedowns. It is not his best skill, but he'll use them to change things up. He does have a legitimate ground game if he can get the fight there. He is very stiff, so he can definitely get caught in the pocket and such, and his defense is just being intimidating. That's all it is. He will flatline if he lands. He knows that. His opponents know that, so sometimes they just don't throw back. This fight is weird, because I will say that Adesanya is very clearly the better fighter here. Does that translate to him winning is the question, because Pyfer only needs 1, and we've seen Adesanya get less and less durable. Given that Adesanya's boxing defense has been such a problem, and we're seeing him struggle with some of the taller guys now, I think Pyfer is going to find the shot and put him away. I'm going to lean towards Pyfer getting a first or second round TKO here. However, I would not at all be shocked if the fight went longer than that and Izzy just dominated, because Pyfer does not have the best cardio. So, very coin flippy fight. I understand why the odds have been so close, but I am going to lean towards the younger fighter in Pyfer to get it done. I don't see Izzy fixing his tall man defense at this point in his career. Yeah, I agree. What about Izzy KO? I mean, he could definitely get a late finish here. Do you think Izzy is washed, or is it more that people know how to target his weaknesses now? I think it's more of the latter, but I could imagine that he's slowing down a little bit. Thoughts on Pyfer submission? I don't think it's going to happen here. I don't think his wrestling is good enough to get Adesanya to the ground. I think if he wrestles, it's just going to be as a setup. It's not actually going to be with the intention to sub Adesanya. I feel like Pyfer has been pacing himself much better since the Manson fight. To some extent, but then even against Kelvin, he slowed down a lot. You think Izzy will retire if he loses? Probably. Joe's cage cutting sucks, by the way. How much of a chance do you have in your opinion? I mean, it's near even, right? Joe's cage cutting, I don't think it sucks. You could say it's not spectacular, but he's definitely landed stuff on people circling. Pyfer could beat Izzy and lose to everyone else in the top 10 not named RDR. Yeah. Did he explain the Luke Riley thing from last week? Yes, in the recap from last week's event, I talked about that. Pyfer doesn't sub Gastelum or even try, he won't sub Izzy. I could imagine him wrestling more here, because obviously Gastelum has the wrestling background, Izzy does not. So I can imagine him trying, I just don't think it's going to happen. Pyfer to me is very reliant on the lead hand fight, posting and groveling the opponent's set up the right. I think based on the prayer fights, Izzy's not allowed to. I wouldn't say he's reliant on a lead hand fight, because he's usually fighting in closed stances. So I disagree with that. Maybe in open stance he is, but that's not a common occasion. I don't think that's going to be the common occasion for most of this either. From as he was defending his title against Marvin Vettori, I low-key don't think the comp he faced as champ was good at all, except for Whitaker. Yeah, I agree with that. Imavov isn't necessarily a wrestler, and he nearly got Izzy down immediately, to be fair. He isn't a wrestler, but he does have pretty good wrestling. Pyfer did lose third to Kelvin Gastelum. That is a weird look. Yeah, exactly. If this reaches like round 3, 4, 5, I don't think it's great for Pyfer. Paulo beats Pyfer? It's possible, though I probably wouldn't pick him. Costa versus Mirzakanov, low-key, very close fight. It could be if Costa survives round 1. That's the question. I hope Izzy evolves from his losses. It's possible. What about Prime Izzy versus Pyfer? I don't know if this is not Prime Izzy, though. I would say if we take Izzy from 5 years ago, maybe his striking is a little faster, but his wrestling's a lot worse. So it could pose problems for him in a different sense. Oracle, what's your opinion on Hunter Campbell? I don't know, honestly. I haven't really looked into that stuff that much recently. Pyfer had a very padded regional scene career. Fair, but he still definitely has the skills to succeed at this level. Or maybe not the skills, but the attributes, and he has enough skills to make it work, I should say. Sorry, I meant to say that I think Izzy switches stances, and that plus the lead hand fight will be where he denies Pyfer the chance to land the big ones, plus some stomps the knee for good measure. If Izzy focuses too much on the hand fight, Pyfer's just going to try to land the left hook instead, and just not play the hand fighting game, but try to use the fact that Izzy is. Pyfer or Fluffy? I'd probably lean Fluffy, especially given what we saw in Pyfer versus Abus. Pyfer got a rep USA. Fair, I mean, we don't have the most champions or high-level fighters at this point. Honestly, I hope Izzy retires after this one, regardless of the result. Yeah, valid. It's been a career for him. He might as well retire without taking too much more damage. Pyfer versus the top 5 contenders, TDP, Maiev, Imvav, Sean. I wouldn't pick him against any of them, to be honest. Danny Silva cost himself 100,000 by telling everyone who's broken the mic, and maybe. Any opinion on Makano versus Duncan? I might have to pick Duncan, but we'll see. As he's just a remnant of the old middleweight era, and the new era are well-rounded guys like Joe Pyfer exist. It's hard for Izzy's style to be able to succeed. That's why he's on a losing streak. True. Would you be able to recap your picks? Yeah, sure. Alright. Alright, so Thainara by decision. Simone by decision. Stirling TKO. O'Neal decision. Tyrell TKO. Hooper submission. Ignacio TKO. McKinney TKO. Malik TKO. Douglas TKO. Chiesa submission. Barber decision. And Pyfer TKO. I'm probably picking too many TKOs as usual, but we'll see what happens. Plug betting service, yes, thank you for the reminder. If you guys are betting on this event, the algorithm did, I believe, over 20 units in profit last week, and over 250 units in profit last year. So only $25 a month, and we do not lose, 90 units in 3 weeks or whatever, what's his name is doing, Lucrative James. So yeah, only $25 a month, unlike the 150 that he's charging, and we won't bankrupt you. So yeah, link is in the description for that. If you want to sign up, always feel free to DM me with questions as well. Thank you for reminding me to plug it. Thoughts on MVP threatening the human race with more fights? Luckily, I'm pretty sure the UFC will either cut him or just give him an impossible fight that will retire him. Did you see Kyoji versus Cop being made? Yeah, good fight. DDP versus Imavov. and method of victory. I don't know. I'd have to look at it more honestly. It would win between Alexandra Topuria versus Tyra. I'd lean Tyra right now. But is he making more competitive against Chimaev than DDP? No. I don't think so. Predicting that many finishes in modern day UFC card as well. Unfortunately, you're probably right. Pico versus Pitbull. I mean, I guess I'm probably mildly leaning Pico, but it's hard to say. What happened with Aswell versus Luke Riley? I talked about that in the beginning of the stream, in the recap section. Yes, guys, the service is very good. Like I said, just avoid random wander and mochi unless you like being pregnant. Out of context, that makes so little sense that no one's gonna have any idea what you're talking about. 150 a month for picking fist fights is insane. Yeah, agreed. Thoughts on Michael Chiesa being on a 3-fight win streak in the Big 26 and still getting fights against other unks? Yeah, I mean, I guess the UFC really liked the fact that he didn't sue them during that whole occasion. Is lucrative MMA a scam? Okay. So one of the guys in our Discord did a deep dive into him, and he does believe that he is a scam. In the sense that it seems like his history doesn't really line up. Of course, losing 80-some units in a few weeks also is not a good indication of your reliability, to say the least. Hard to say anything for sure in this space. It's a very weird space. Early prediction for your Kyoji versus Cobb being potentially made. I'd probably lean Kyoji. What do you think about them being in the Apex? I don't know why we have the Apex at all now. UFC's gonna cut a hell of these. I assume I mean a hell of a lot of these guys. We'll see what happens, yeah. Should be in Japan, not the damn Apex. Yeah, I agree. I heard lucrative James say he's down 600,000 this year as well. Yeah, that's crazy. I feel like with sports bettors, there's like a pretty basic rule where if someone is claiming they're living off of sports betting and they're offering a pick service, they're either lying about the fact that they're living off of their sports betting, or they they just are lying about it, right? Because they either suck and they need the picks, or just like it doesn't make sense. Because in the time it takes to have a pick service, you could just put a little bit more studying into whatever you're betting on and do better. So if you could actually live off of it, then you just would without trying to help anyone else, realistically speaking. People in the middle, where it's like, okay, you're making some money, but you can't live off of it, then it makes sense. They might had so much hope for MVP before the Holland fight. Fair. Yeah, I can't say I ever did, but I understand why people did. He definitely looked more entertaining earlier in his career. What do you think is the easiest fight for Brawlho in the top 5? 5? Let's see. There are no easy fights in the top 5 at this point. I mean, like Adesanya, of course, but if Adesanya loses and then no longer in the top 5, then it's all tough. What do you think went wrong in DDP's game plan? Personally, I feel like his lack of pure wrestling training really messed him up. Well, what went wrong is he was relying on Chimaev gassing out. And while I understand why, that in itself is not a good enough game plan. Cav is apparently fighting Pantoja. Ridiculous matchmaking. I guess Pantoja's 4 title defense is anything. He doesn't deserve the winner of Van versus Tyra. There is also a possibility that Pantoja just wanted to fight instead of waiting out. But I do agree with you. Yes, I gotta have the Dana White files for these matchups valid. You say that, but lucrative James has cool cars on his Insta response. the The perfect indication of someone's success. For a full-time job, you will live off your betting. Yeah, exactly. With getting limited, I don't think it's sustainable to live in general. I mean, if you have a big enough bankroll and you're using like Polymarket or one of those prediction markets where you don't get limited, it's probably possible. But he hasn't even said he's doing that, and he has like very specific methods that you wouldn't see on a prediction market from what I've seen. So yeah, it does make it a little weird. Is he beats Kaio, yes or no? I'd probably lean Kaio, but not confidently. Pyfer or Adesanya? I picked Pyfer, but not confidently. Pyfer versus Imvov? I pick Imvov. Would Pereira at heavyweight KO at Prime Ngannou? Yes. Do you think Cav can maybe rip at the body and somehow get a TKO? It's possible. I think more likely is a decision, but Cav definitely has passed the victory. What are they actually doing, Cav versus Pantoja? I don't know, to be honest. DDP also said he never trains pure wrestling or BJJ, and you gotta have that against a specialist like Jemai. Fair. Make a matchup that would result in a result that would shock people. Example, Izzy versus Strickland, or maybe an interweight matchup. Okay. Interesting request. Let me think about that. I feel like, I don't know, prospects are just worse recently. I can't really think of crazy good prospects right now where I could pull a random name out of it. But I will say, like, one that I think is true that may surprise people, David Martinez versus Petr Yan. I think David Martinez has a solid chance. What do you think of Joe Rogan wanting UFC to be an open map basketball court? Joe Rogan lost the script a long time ago. I don't even know why he commentates UFC anymore, to be honest. Any 2 to 3 leg locks for this weekend. In the betting Discord, we'll have stuff like that. Vachejos versus Garcia. I'd probably pick Vachejos. Do you think that Dustin Jacoby has a good chance against Ankalaev? Interesting one. I'd probably pick Ankalaev, but I'd have to look at it more. If Tyrell had the physicality to be a welterweight, do you think he could beat Islam or GSP? Possibly. I would say maybe in a few years I would be more confident. Prime Brad Tavares would shock the world against a young Usman. That'd be possible, yeah. Can't wait for the classic. Oh, did Alex Pereira ever make middleweight line from Joe Rogan 5 seconds into the gunfight? Valid. I'm a million on the wait list for Polymarket. What do I do? I didn't even realize there was a wait list. But I don't use Polymarket, so I couldn't tell you, to be honest. Is it possible there's a part of Kevin's game that isn't strong and that will be exposed, like besides the way he exits? I mean, I think it's just how he sets up his counter, right? He's always dipping in predictable directions. Thoughts on how Strickland versus Morales would go at 185. It's such an interesting fight for me, but Morales is so hittable. If Strickland can develop a better sense of urgency, it would be interesting. I mean, Strickland would probably pick him apart realistically. In Aljo's most recent videos, he talked about 10-10 rounds, I hope. There definitely should be 10-10 rounds, but UFC won't do it probably because it would lead to more draws, which causes them problems. In the GRE episode with Poirier, they spent 10 minutes talking about calf kicks. That's wild. Favorite betting platform? Honestly, I wouldn't say I really specifically love any of them. They all have pros and cons. Pyfer versus Chimaev, thoughts on how it would go. I mean, seeing Pyfer versus Abus, you have to lean Chimaev there, in my opinion. Percentage-wise, how confident are you that Tyra beats Van? Until I do tape, I'm not going to know. But, like, pre-tape, I'd probably say, like, 70%. How would JDM versus Gary go? It's an interesting one, because Gary finds a way to win matches that he really should not. I would probably pick JDM, just, again, I think he's the more talented fighter, and he has the skills to win that. But, like, maybe Gary out-wrestles him for 5 rounds, for all I know, honestly. Yoel or Sean? I'd probably lean towards Strickland. I think his defense is just too good for that. Hello, Oracle, can you go over the prediction for the Izzy fight? I went with Pyfer by early TKO, but if it goes any further, it could easily be in Izzy domination, to be honest. I don't think Morales would do well in middleweight because of how much he uses reach and size advantage. Yeah, it's valid. Instead of 10-10 rounds, they should make 10-8s and 10-7s more flexible. But again, that raises the probability of a draw, and they won't do that. Yeah, I agree with that as well. We should have more of that type of stuff. I think the more efficient way that someone in our Discord was talking about was making like 2019, 2018, 2017 rounds and such. It works out better mathematically than like the 10-8 versus 10-7 and such. What do you like about Tyro's style? I mean, his grappling is just ridiculous. Yeah, but JDM can't check a calf kick. I'm sure he'll learn that now. Thoughts on Robert Brychek? He was super underrated going into Tavares' fight. If he can improve, we'll see what he can do. It's just a little bit late in his career, I think. But he's not bad. I have with these streams heavily. Thank you. Do you think Brundage beats Petrosky? He's fighting him in like a month. Honestly, he might. Like, there's a very reasonable chance he does. I think JDM is being a bit underrated these days. He's a very solid striker. Yeah, I agree. Khabib or DDP? That's a very random one. I'd have to think about that more, honestly. Probably lean... I don't know, actually. How effective do you think the low kicks and body knees will be for Prates against JDM? I think they'll be a little risky here. I would say the low kicks are better. I think the body knees are going to be a risk because he's opening himself up to a combo if he throws that. I think UFC has some weird plans right now, hence the mess at welterweight and waiting for Prates in case he wins to book against Islam instead of Gary, ideally. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Gary has the capacity to reenact the game plan against JDM similar to Muslims. It's possible. What do you think about Tyra's striking? I love Tyra's grappling as well. I do think it's underrated. He definitely has power in his hands, and he's pretty good at timing things, but he does also need to get a little more fluid. He's a little stiff. Brychek is fighting Cam Roston on the Perth card. Right, thoughts? I might have to lean Brychek, we'll see. Because seeing Cam Roston getting like rocked pretty badly by Brunson was a... sorry, Brundage, not Brunson. By Brundage was not good. Love your show, Oracle, only MMA YouTuber I got in my way to watch the live streams. I appreciate it, thank you. Usman versus Connor. If they actually did that, it would be kind of funny. Goji versus Tyra. I'd go Tyra. Oracle is my goat, glorious king. Thank you. Does anyone remember GFL that got cancelled with all the old fighters coming back? Yes. Yousri versus Prime. John Jones. Is it crazy to lean Yousri? I would probably lean Jones getting it done via like just decision wrestling, but Yousri could definitely pull it off. I would not be surprised at all. Who was the best fighter from last season of Dana White's Contender Series besides JPL? I always forget when someone asks me that, who fought. I think one of the Oliveras on it was pretty good, though, right? I'm blanking on his first name. Why do you think Jones would beat Aspinall? Because Aspinall is way too limited and doesn't know really how to deal with footwork well. Like, Gunn is not that spectacular, right? And he was making it very competitive with Aspinall. Jones would be that, except with somehow more power than Gunn, a better jab, much better wrestling, of course, the ability to slow the fight because he can clinch up whenever he needed to, stuff like that. Thoughts on Fight Lab's podcast? I didn't even know he had a podcast, not gonna lie. What are some thoughts that would make you less confident on making solid pick and Chimaev Strickland fight? It's tough because we've just never seen Strickland have a problem in the grappling since he moved up to middleweight. Like, if he gets taken down, he gets up within seconds every single time. So it's tough to be like, oh, Chimaev is just going to ragdoll him. It's possible, but I can't be confident in that, to say the least. Who's a greater talented fighter that the UFC fed to the Sharks and never recovered? Maybe like Andre Philly to an extent. Thoughts on Tommy McMillan? I was not particularly impressed. I thought the fight was very sloppy, but he has potential. We'll see what happens. If you had to master one strike to absolute perfection, what would you do? There's arguments for a lot. I mean, the go-to argument is jab. I would honestly say maybe cross is a little better, though. Fight Lab or rodents? I'm not sure. Feels like if Ulberg wins, the light heavyweight division will plunge into darkness. Talented fighter, but I don't think he has a fan base. Yeah, I get what you mean. It'll definitely slow the roll there, to say the least. We need you to go on to Fight Lab's podcast so he can go more into depth on Shanko's third leg technique. Yeah, that would definitely be a question we would have to bring up there. We watch another Fight Lab video. Let's see if there's anything good. Oh, there's like 3 Murphy videos. Let's see the one on a knee. There we go.
When Lerryan Murphy drives off of his back foot and sends his hips forward, Movsar Evloev anticipates a round kick and brings his hands over to block. But this wasn't a kick. Murphy was attempting to land a knee. The only problem...
Something interesting about Murphy is he's definitely good at disguising what he's doing with his leg. Like, all of his movements look very similar, to say the least.
The problem is that Evloev was moving backward, so he jumped out of range. Murphy needed to set it up by first getting Evloev to lean forward. When Murphy threw his jab, Evloev almost always slipped inside and leaned over his front leg. As he shifts on his front...
This is going to get Evloev into trouble in the future, because it is true that he does like to try to set up the overhands like that, And it just is so stiff to watch. Like, this is not how you throw an overhand properly. I don't know what he's doing.
Front leg, he can counter with his overhand.
Yeah, so like, Evloev lands the overhands. If he threw a proper overhands where his weight was actually forwards, he could have gotten more of an impact here. So I just don't know what he's doing.
At the same time, and because he changes levels, he's safe from any follow-up punches at head level. Murphy started to catch on though and feinted the jab to bait the lean, then tried to land his right hand down low. But
if that was the intent here, that's a little strange. Because if you know that the person is going to dip, then you would follow the dip, and you're either going to feint it, throw a hook, and try to intercept it that way, or you're going to anticipate it and throw further in that direction. I don't love throwing further in that direction because you know they're going to take off the power with how they're moving. You might as well throw the hook.
because Evloev's chin was tucked, it was protected by his forehead. Where he's not protected is from underneath. So what if Murphy feinted the jab, and instead of throwing a right hand, he threw a knee? Petr Yan was doing something very similar against Sean O'Malley. When he expected a combination, he tucked his chin and covered his head to take the shots on his gloves and forehead, where they do a lot less damage. So later in the fight, O'Malley popped his hands out and took a hard step forward, and Yan reacted by ducking down and covering up. But this time, O'Malley followed it with a knee that split Yan's guard right down the middle. When
Wait, what was the point? I'm confused. What? Am I too tired, or did he just not say anything? What? But what was the point? Like, what was the lesson in this or video in this case? I guess I'm very confused. That was a weird video. He was just talking, didn't say anything. Yeah, I'm confused to what the intent here was at all. This felt like he was meeting a video quota. Maybe that Lerryan could have kneed. He just yapped for 60 seconds. Yeah, I mean, that would have been a logical point here. Is like he should have thrown the knee, but he just went into a bunch of setup and then said nothing. I think the point is he wanted Murphy to use a knee when Mansur was dipping his head. Yeah, that would make sense. I just don't know why he didn't say it then. I don't know. That was a really weird one. He was trying to say Lerryan is the featherweight GOAT, and I completely agree with him in that sense. I mean, might as well have been saying that. John getting a head kick KO when he reads that. Yeah, very possible. As they would say, he's a jacked hamster, probably why he's so stiff. Jeez. Imagine if Loev just never gets a title shot until he retires. If they are going to actually go with John Silver for the title shot, then I'm expecting them to give Evloev a fight that he just can't win. Like a Lopez 2, or like if Steve Garcia beats Lopez, then maybe Steve Garcia, something along those lines. Am I the only one that feels like both Mansur and Lerryan are on the 4th and 5th best in the world at featherweight? That fight just did not look good for either of them, so I get what you're saying for sure. Jean Silva or Prime Volk, Prime Max. I think Jean Silva could beat anyone except maybe Tybura. And Vlev wouldn't beat Lopez again? No, I think Lopez would knock him out this time. Are you picking Moicano Duncan fight? I'm probably leaning Duncan, but I'm really not sure. Vlev versus Prime Francis Ngannou. I think that's the fight to make. We need to find out. Thoughts on... I never know how to say his name, but I know who you're talking about. He's not that good. Like, he's good, but he's not that good. I know Joe Rogan glazes him constantly. he's fought mainly like fighters who should have been retired 5 to 10 years ago, or absolute can so far. So we'll see what happens when he fights someone actually decent. Do you think Evloev will get the title shot this time? Nope. Don't know how Duncan has gotten this far. Me neither, to be honest. But to be fair, he's had a lot of fortunate matchups. Joe Rogan glazes everyone, bro. To an extent, yeah, true. Do you watch boxing or any other sports? I watch boxing occasionally, but not consistently. Yuki versus Haggerty predictions. That's a tough one. I don't know if I could pick Haggerty at this point. I mean, look at their recent fights again. I'm forgetting who they last fought. I need to rewatch Haggerty versus Wei. I don't remember how that went. The Nabel fight would have been good to see. If I had to make a prediction right now, I'd probably pick Yuki. How confident will you be in John against Volk? Like 75% or so. Thoughts on the Shem show? There was a rumor he was going to fight Mokano in his debut. I mean, that would have put us out of our misery quickly. Dude would have gotten obliterated. And give the title shot to Murphy, that'd be funny. So Yush versus Selkield. I mean, Selkield, of course, should win. But if he decides to be an idiot and wrestle for no reason, he's going to have a rough night. What's your thoughts on Ziva boxing? I don't like it. I feel like, again, it takes the focus away from MMA. Who's the fighter you think could help most with advice? I mean, honestly, anyone who has a lot of attributes but just has terrible game plans. There's quite a few fighters like that. Would Leon Edwards beat Gabriel Bonfim right now? I'll have to do tape on that. I'm honestly not sure. Did you see Gypsy Crusader versus Super Hot Fire? I need to watch my eyes after that. I don't even know what that is, to be honest. I don't know who either of them are. You don't think Silva versus Ilya is 50-50 anymore? I still think it's close to that. Anderson Silva versus DDP. DDP. I think Yuki decision. Yeah, it's very possible. I mean, I think that technically should be the favored outcome. Yeah, I mean, the Super Leg fight. Yeah, maybe I'm overthinking this. He should win after that fight, right? If John and Evloev fought, do you think John cooks him throughout or wins important rounds with damage, like cuts it? I mean, it's probably the typical Jean pattern where he'll have a close round one where maybe he takes it at the end, maybe he doesn't, and then just round two onwards, just do more and more until he gets the finish. Gypsy Crusader is the guy who dressed up as the Joker and goes on a Omegle to call people slurs. Cuba Hotfire is the guy from a meme who became fat. I don't even have words for this. So usually whenever he comes in with strong looking back wins, I think his loss looks a little blobby, no offense. Maybe. I think he is aging though, so it's going to be harder for him to maintain that. I'll do one more plug for the betting service. Again, if you guys are betting and for some reason haven't joined it already, we did over 20 units in profit last week, over 250 units in profit last year. Only $25 a month. Do consider joining. Link is in the description here, or feel free to DM me with questions on Instagram. You should put the fight footage in your breakdowns with the filter you used for the backdrop. I think it would look cool. The problem with footage is, especially on YouTube, they love to be strict with that. But I'll see if there's anything I could do. What do you consider your GOAT criteria, resume, accolades, culture impact, etc.? I think that multi-champions are the highest criteria. After that, it's like resume, dominance, etc. But I think that if you're not a double champ, I'm not even considering you for GOAT at this point. Murphy versus Dillashaw. I'd probably lean Dillashaw, to be honest. What matchup are you most excited for in the UFC happening soon? Good question. Let's see. I mean, I really want to see JDM versus Pratos. I feel like that's going to be really fun. How do you think Sadulayev does in MMA? Like, honestly, I'd have to look at tape again. Do you think Islam's faking the hand injury? That video of him hitting the bag looked horrible. Either he's actually injured or his striking is genuinely horrible. Honestly, I haven't seen the video. I'd have to look at that. If Pratos were to cough in JDM, would he be the most dangerous striker in welterweight history? Yeah, for sure. I'll send in Discord, thanks. I feel like double champ's a bit arbitrary as the UFC didn't allow them before McGregor. Silva would have probably been one if it were allowed back then, but I get what you're saying. You were allowed to. You could go up the weight class. You might just have to vacate again earlier. Granted, yeah, it definitely became more of a popular thing later, to say the least. But I also really don't think that anyone from that era could be considered for GOAT anyways, except for maybe, again, Anderson Silva. But even with him, I don't think his resume is strong enough. Hey, how are you doing? What about GSP? I mean, I have GSP as the technical GOAT right now because of the fact that he's a double champ, had an extended reign, relatively good names on his resume, stuff like that. But it gets harder and harder to say as time goes on. All right. I'm probably going to call it here. Thank you guys for coming today. It was definitely fun answering the questions afterwards. If you guys are betting on this event, one more time, do consider joining the betting service. If not, hope you guys enjoy the event. Have a good night, everyone, and I will see you guys next time.